Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I am your host Faisal and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, India, a state sponsoring terrorism, using it as a tool of its foreign policy. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, then Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka. Then we have seen in UK, in USA and Canada. These are the few examples. Now it's evident in Palestine as well. Means India becomes a state sponsoring global terrorism. Indian involvement in ethnic cleansing of the innocent Palestinians in Gaza and other areas by sinking in the mercenaries into the Israeli occupation forces is widespread in a sense that India is continuously providing these foot soldiers to Israel. Also, the medium altitude lethal drones, weapons and joint intelligence to the Israel. It's really surprising that the first ever death during the current invasion by the Israeli occupation forces into Gaza was an Indian citizen, belongs to India. India is also going to replace lots of Palestinian workers on behalf of Israel. Those were 81,500 workers within Israel, those were working for their livelihoods. But India is sending at least 40,000 Indian workers in first phase. Beside Western backing, as a result of Indo-Israel Nexus, the genocide, the war crimes, atrocities are at the large scale in Gaza. As a result of it, nearly 32,000 of the innocent Palestinians died at this point in time. And more than 74,000 Palestinians are critically injured. To discuss this horrible scenario of Indo-Israel Nexus, we have in our studios Arhama Siddiqa. She is the research fellow and working in Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Most welcome to you, Arhama. Thank you very much for your presence here in the studios. And online joining us, Dr. Waseem Ishaque, the senior analyst. Most welcome to you, Dr. Waseem.
My pleasure.
My first question is to you, Dr. Waseem, that how do you see this Indo-Israel nexus in Gaza particularly? It is not limited to Gaza, but also to the West Bank as well. And we have lots of reports coming that some of the skirmishes which are going on between the Israeli occupation forces and some of the factions in Lebanon, these are also involved over there. So both armies and the intelligence agencies are actively involved in this heinous genocide which is going on in Gaza. How do you respond?
Faisal, Indo-Israeli collaboration is not a new phenomenon. My research indicates that since 1992, both India and Israel have been collaborating at the military level, other than trade and agriculture and other things. And since India portrayed itself to be on the recipient side because of the Kashmiri uprisings starting in 1990, indigenous uprisings, and Israel helped a lot during those insurgency periods in last about 30 years. And Indian demographic changes inside the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, then atrocities inside Jammu and Kashmir were strongly supported by Israel. And India has also supported Israel militarily and in terms of military hardware, in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of capacity building during Arab-Israeli War of 1967 and 1973. And other than that, several other skirmishes here and there within Palestine or with Hamas or in the Syrian border. So India and Israel have been actively involved in support of each other, and they have portrayed themselves to be a common threat, that is the Islamic extremism and Islamic terrorism, unfortunately. So India portrayed the same picture for Kashmir, and Israel portrayed the same picture for Palestine. And this was actually to deflect the international attention towards both the legitimate and on which the UN Security Council resolutions exist. However, what we have seen, the ongoing genocide in Gaza, India has been absolutely mum at the UN Security Council. while being a part of non-aligned and having human rights and democracy and all that. But this time, India has demonstrated at the diplomatic level also its full support for Israel. Militarily, few examples we have just quoted. The India is, in my research, India is actually suggesting how that demographic change can happen in Palestine. The previous, before the Gaza war, almost the 4.5 million Palestinians and 4.3 million or 4.4 million Israelis. So this demographic shift was actually alarming for the Israelis and their Western partners. How now they have gone about prosecuting the war in Gaza was actually ethnic cleansing by way of the changing the demographic population of the Palestinians. So they have done it successfully, and this has been totally corroborated by the Indians. Now coming over to the...
You are absolutely right. Arhama, when we are talking about the Modi regime's Islamophobic attitude and Islamophobic policies against their own Muslim community, Muslim minority in India, now extending all-out support to Israel and using different sort of things like weaponry, the diplomatic support along with the mercenaries. What about that sense? And they are supporting that ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza.
So right now in Israel, we have, as of October, before October 1st, 2023, we have 85,000 Indian-born Israelis in Israel, Jews in Israel, sorry. So, and a lot of them have enlisted in the Israeli army as of October 7, the events of October 7. So, the all-out support is because Indians, especially in the past decade, since Modi came into power in 2014, see Israel as an ideal and as a model to be followed, especially in the sense of how Israelis deal with Palestinians, especially in the context of what has happened after October 7th. And they see Israel as a model to be followed. They're already implementing they have been implementing Israeli policies in illegally occupied Kashmir as well. They take Israeli actions as a blueprint to be emulated in Kashmir as well. So, as far as mercenaries are concerned, Israel has had a history of using mercenaries, especially 1948, and so it's no surprise that it has Indians enlisted in its army as well.
Your point well taken. Arhama, when there are lots of media reports that, as you have rightly mentioned about some of the Indian settlers in Israel, those were the Indian Jews who opted to be there and have the part of the Israeli occupation forces and all that. But Hindu mercenaries are also now the part of Israeli occupation forces. And there are reports that they are involved in some of the fighting at the Lebanon border as well. So how do you see that aspect? Whether they are trying to have escalation in this war spill over to the region as well?
So initially all the neighboring countries, and as still yet I would say, they do not want a spillover of the war into their borders, right? So as far as India is concerned, as I mentioned, there are 85,000 Indians over there, and almost 200 Indians have been recruited into the Israeli military as of October 16th, to put an exact date. As far as the southern border is concerned with Lebanon, so there has been fighting, exchange of fire between Hezbollah and Israeli forces, and on March 4th it was reported that an Indian was killed on the border. But we also have to distinguish one thing, that yes, Indians are fighting in the Israeli army, yes, they are exchanging fire with the Lebanese, but then again there are 900 UN peacekeeper Indians as well as on the border as well.
You are absolutely right, and this is the question which I asked to Dr. Waseem, that we have evident figures from the United Nations that some of the interim force in Lebanon, stationed at least 900, as Arhama rightly mentioned about, Indian Army regular troops. They are stationed there for some sort of a peace gesture or peace operations. So, on the other hand, there are at least 200 of the Indian soldiers, Indian Army soldiers are stationed in the United Nations interim force that is in Lebanon, along with that, that is a UN disengagement force in Golan Heights at the Syrian border. So, do you think that on one side there are the peacekeeping forces of the United Nations and India as a part of it, whether it's the Lebanon border or the Syrian border? On the other hand, Indian mercenaries are the part of Israeli occupation forces. So, what kind of hypocrisy that is? How India is playing this double game in the Middle East right now?
I have absolutely no doubt what the Indian regime is actually doing inside Gaza and inside the wider Middle East. And if you remember, at the end of 1973 Arab-Israeli war, the issue of Golan Heights, issue of Lebanon, etc., those remain unresolved. And since then, the UN forces are deployed there. And India since had the acceptance of Israel, so therefore, Israel had actually given a green signal for deployment of Indian troops as part of those peacekeeping forces. So from that perspective, India has shown its benign face to the world, being part of the peacekeeping forces for maintaining peace and stability along those two volatile borders. But however, what we have seen, as we have correctly highlighted several times now, that India has militarily participated in this ongoing war in Gaza and also partly in the West Bank. So this is very unfortunate. And this is that part of hypocritic Indian designs for the wider Palestine and the wider Middle East in the context of reshaping it. And since India had, from its perspective, successfully demonstrated its barbaric attitude in Kashmir and has been portraying that it has been able to successfully quell the insurgency and the freedom struggle which was going on very actively since last 30 years. So the same way they want to replicate the Indian experience of controlling the Kashmir and changing the demography of Kashmir now inside the West Bank and the wider Gaza. So this is what the hypocrisy is, and this is what I say, that the international order today stands at the crossroads. The civilization world on one side and the barbaric regimes on the other side. And unfortunately, the Israel, the India, and most of its Western allies, they remain on the other side of, which is the barbaric side. And this is very unfortunate. And let me also quantify this by way of that 9 different kind of resolutions were tabled in the UN Security Council for ceasefire in Gaza. And all those have been vetoed ruthlessly by the United States and its Western allies.
Unfortunately, it seems that the civilization is actually mixed up with the barbarism, really. Arhama, when we are talking about India as a state sponsoring terrorism, the state is not in isolation, actually. Their media is actually playing a huge part in that and in shaping fake narratives and all that. So, Indian media right now, they are propagating that propagating and spreading misinformation, disinformation and the fake news about the Palestine and the Palestinians, and they are covering up most of the things which Israel is doing and or in nexus with India. So how do you see that perspective?
So we have Indian elections coming up from next month, 19th April to be exact, and we have seen, as I have mentioned, that Indians view Israel as a role model for them. And now with the current ongoing conflict, especially in Gaza, which is focused on Gaza right now, as well as the West Bank, Indians are using that as a base, as a fuel, as adding fuel to fire in promoting their viewpoints, Islamophobic viewpoints as well. So we see a lot of misinformation, disinformation regarding the events that have happened on October 7th. India was also the first country. Modi was the one of the first leaders to sympathize with Israel in the aftermath of the events of October 7th. So we see basically what is happening is that we have elections coming up, and all the Indians, the right-wing Indians, BJP supporters, who are promoting a Hindu Rashtra within India as well, they want to use the situation in Palestine.
So most of the scholars right now, they are calling it. It's not surprising, but they are calling it that the relation between India and Israel is like that. That it is kind of Nathan Modi or something like that, Narendra Yahoo or something like that in that phrase, if we just embed it. And having the same evil because they dreamed for the Hindu Rashtra along with the greater Israel. So these are the flip-flop, different two sides of the same coin, and both are collaborating actually to make that dream a reality.
So that is each of Israel and India's end goal is to have a rashtra of sorts within their own territories. But we also have to see, since Modi came into power, even before he came into power and was the chief minister of Gujarat, he was very inspired by Israel. And he was also the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel in 2017.
Yes.
And then we saw a culmination of MOUs being signed from 2017 to 2018, when Netanyahu also visited India in 2018. So since they draw inspiration from each other, and the end goal is, yes, respectively to establish their own greater Israel, Hindu Rashtra state, but then they're also, what they're doing now is that they're premising their end goals, respective end goals, on economic sustainable projects between these two countries.
You were talking about economy. So India is actually exploiting that area as well. So most of the trade unions right now, they are agitating, they are protesting that why thousands of Indians are, government is sending them to the war zone. So, but they are going. 40,000 of the Indians, Indian workers, seems to be workers, might be the mercenaries, might be something else. So they are going to Israel. And Israel is actually replacing with these workers the 81,500 of the Palestinian workers. And all of because they want to end everything which is related to Palestine. How do you see that?
So in May 2023, India and Israel had an MOU in which 40,000 Indian workers would be allowed to work in Israel, especially in the fields of construction and agriculture as well. So, but after the events of October 7th, Israel has barred 85,000 Palestinians from jobs, right? So we have 85,000 Palestinians which are unemployed, but then we also have Israel has 85,000 positions which it needs to fulfill. India is doing what India does best. It has an abundance of labor force. It is cashing in on the MOU it signed last year, and it has sent in and is sending in people to fill in those vacancies as well. As you have rightly said, we do not know, under the cover of these vacancies there could be mercenaries, but officially what we know is that Israel is importing labor from India under that MOU which is signed in 2023.
Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about India's support to Israel, there is an online army of pro-Israel Sanghis, what we call the friends, and supporters from the far-right Hindutva parties and who are actively involved at the social media, and they are gaining support from the social media platforms in favor of illegitimate state of Israel. How do you see that?
Unfortunately, what we have seen in today's media-savvy environments, media plays a greater role for the actually making of the minds of the people. What United States did while entering before Iraq and Afghanistan and host of the other Middle Eastern countries, the CNN played a greater role at that time for creating those and shaping those environments. Similarly, the same template is being replicated now by the Indian social media workers for creating a sympathy for the state of Israel and creating an impression that Israel is fighting its counterterrorism efforts, and it is actually facing a threat from Islamic terrorism. So therefore, actually trying to charge the public sentiments within India and outside India. And so far, they have gained a greater success because the way the Western leaders have so far reacted, the way the United States is reacting, and the way India and its allies are reacting, they are pro-Israel. So they have been able to create those favorable environments. And what we have seen, there's hardly any condemnation of Israeli acts of killing now more than 32,000, 33,000 people and injuring more than about 74,000 people. And majority of the killed are the innocent children and women. Unfortunately, nobody is seeing those, and still they are trying to vindicate whatever the Israel has done so far, and still supporting the state of Israel in its genocidal campaign. This is the most unfortunate part, but this is what the Indian social media has successfully been able to do.
Your point well taken. Arhama, what is your opinion related to the news leak on February 2nd, 2024? Approximately 20 of the Indian-made medium altitude drones were delivered to Israel to have intensify its campaign on Gaza. So India's all-out support to Israel means that they want the complete ethnic cleansing in Palestine.
So when these reports surfaced in February 2024, last month, the thing is that none of these two sides have officially stated that yes, drones were sent from India to Israel.
It was kind of a covert agreement or something
exactly.
like in verbal.
But then if you put 1 + 1 = 2, you also see since 2014, especially 2015 to 2019, that period, India is one of the biggest exporters of defense equipment to Israel. It's for India, it's almost $2 billion industry, right? Even more. And
this company was actually set up in Hyderabad in India
in 2018. Yes.
Basically by the support of Israelis, and these are the drones which Israel actually made at home.
Yes.
So this is the first one to outsource.
And this particular manufacturing complex is the only one outside of Israel in the whole world. So India, so obviously 1 + 1 = 2. Those drones were obviously exported back to Israel. Also, it is I would like to say it is highly shameful that a country is supporting another country which is all out, systematically involved in genocide as well. We have examples of 2 Japanese companies cancelling their MOUs with Israel in the past month. We have a Netherlands High Court which has also said that no defense equipment will be exported to Israel. So it is highly shameful of India.
Thank you very much, Arhama, for being here in the studios and for your candid views. Thank you, so nice of you. Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about Indo-Israel defense ties among each other, along with that, the procurements, what the India is doing from the Israel right now, the 46% of the Israel's global sales are going towards India. And since 2017, after becoming strategic partner, India and Israel are co-producing lots of weapons, including the drones and lots of other things. So how do you see that threat to any region, to this one in South Asia, as well as to the Middle East?
Pakistan has been a sufferer of Indian hegemonic designs and Indo-Israeli collaboration. What we have seen that prior to our nuclear explosions, a lot of incidents were reported in the open media and everywhere that Indo-Israeli collaboration had actually planned certain preemptive strikes against Pakistan to prevent Pakistan from taking those nuclear explosions. So unfortunately, we have seen and we have actually faced the brunt of Indo-Israeli collaboration. This is not a new phenomenon. With respect to the military hardware, India and Israel both mutually exchange and mutually deliver hardware to each other. And now, since this is the time of need for the Israel, the US has been the biggest seller or biggest donor of the military hardware, and is followed by India as a number 2. And the drone which we are just talking a short while ago, the most of the drone attacks which have happened inside Lebanon and inside Syria now are reported to have been provided to Israel by India. So unfortunately, if you see these evil nexus growing by way of providing the intelligence sharing, the military hardware, the drones, and now the reported personnels also being involved as a combat troops to support the Israeli defense forces. Unfortunately, we are facing a huge escalation if it is not addressed right away. And it is right time the world, especially the great powers, the United States, the China, and the Russia, and
So, Dr.
also
Waseem,
India.
Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about rule-based order, so these are the Western powers who are always propagating that rule-based order. So, when you have, there is no international community, no international law, the international system failed, United Nations Security Council done nothing despite of 9 resolutions, those were vetoed by the United States and all others. So, where is the rule-based orders? It means that Indo-US Nexus, along with the support of the Western allies, they are intensifying the genocide in Palestine.
As per my analysis, what we are going to witness in the near future, that whenever this Gaza war ends, it has to end at some point and at some point in time, and maybe in a very near future, as the talks are still going on and everybody is still optimistic about those ceasefire talks and peace talks, there will be a new international altogether, new international order. What we have seen, the 1945 post-Second World War international order, as I have been saying in the past as well, is now probably crumbling and we have seen its limits. All those aspects which you just highlighted has seen actually the hegemonic powers have demonstrated double standards in terms of interpretation and in terms of implementation of that rule-based international order. Somehow they have taken the leverage by way of their collaboration by the Western countries and the Israel and the United States, and the global South has unfortunately been left aside. However, there are rising concerns and the more strong voices from the global South to have a revamped international rule-based international order in which the China and Russia should also be the partners of responsible partners of
Definitely.
this
You are
rule-based
absolutely
international
right.
order.
Your point well taken, Dr. Waseem. Here we welcome our next guest, Akbar Sheharyar Khan. He is the research analyst and working there in Islamabad Policy Research Institute. Most welcome to you, Akbar. Thank you very much for your time in the studios. Akbar, when we are talking about the Indian dual nature, full of hate and dubious character, and coming out of Palestinian tragedy basically, on one hand as an aid provider, on the other hand as a participant into the genocide, particularly in Gaza by Israel, by sinking in the mercenaries and the soldiers into the Israeli occupation forces. How do you see that?
So, if we look at history, we can see that India was one of the first states to recognize Palestine. It was one of the first countries to recognize PLO. It did not recognize Israel as a state till 1992. Fast forward to 2023, and we are seeing that they are abstaining from a resolution to hold a humanitarian truce. So, what has changed? I don't think that India was very noble before, but their policy has been very pragmatic. Right before, back in the Cold War era, they wanted to enter the Arab, they wanted to basically get close to the Arab states. They were, parroting a anti-colonial stance and supporting the Palestinians.
But it was because of Gandhi or Jawaharlal Nehru's policies.
Yes.
Right now we have an extremist mindset, and Hindutva mindset there in India, and they want their country, as they are sponsoring terrorism and all that across the world, and there is no doubt about that. So do you think that this duplicity of their character is actually highlighted in Palestine right now?
Yes, it has. It has shown that they have completely shifted towards Israel, notwithstanding their previous stance, showing that now they are looking. There are two factors to this. You have to see that first they are trying to get close to the US-led world order, and they are trying to find their place in it. The second reason is that the Hindutva and the Zionist mindset has a common outsider enemy, that is the Muslim, and both of them have the similar narrative of Muslim invasions, of reclaiming the lost history of the Jews or the Hindus. So that narrative helps them basically get more get popularity for their get the rationale for their barbaric actions, and to basically conduct their settler colonial tactics in Gaza or Kashmir for that.
So what you perceive by the Indian origin mercenaries or the soldiers, part of the Israeli occupation forces, killing innocent Palestinian children in Gaza particularly, and then they are the part of that ethnic cleansing and genocide over there.
Yes.
So how do you see that? Because we haven't seen any sort of a country partnering into the genocide in any region of the world.
I think it has more to do with the national mood within India that has been fostered by BJP. The very concentrated matter with which BJP has fostered Muslim hate within India, it is now showing or manifesting itself in this case that Indian origin Jewish soldiers and Indian soldiers in Palestine have been taking active part in the genocide against Muslims, is because they have been told that the primary obstacle for them, or the primary enemy, that is the Muslim. And in this they are one with the Zionist and the Israeli state.
Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, there are ample reports unveils that the Indian military intelligence is providing all-out support to the Israeli occupation forces for a large-scale genocide in Gaza particularly, and that support is not only available from India but also from within Israel when the intelligence is stationed over there, Indian intelligence is stationed there. What's your take?
Yes, that's absolutely true. India is providing a great intelligence collaboration, and also the counter-terrorism efforts they are coordinating, not only inside Gaza and West Bank, but they're also coordinating same inside Syria and deep inside Lebanon. Unfortunately, you have seen last few days, there were reports of deep drone strikes inside Lebanon and killing certain Hezbollah leaders. So this is a very dangerous phenomena, and all-out escalation is on the card. And as we have seen, the situation in Red Sea has been escalating because of the US and UK strikes on the Houthi targets, and we also seen the same US deep strikes inside Iraq and also in Lebanon and Syria. So unfortunately, this intelligence collaboration between Israel and India is not only limited to the Gaza Strip only. It is actually now providing all-out support, and they have taken the Persian-guided and very high-value targets inside deep in Syria and Lebanon. This is the indicative of their intelligence collaboration and also the collaboration of their counter-terrorism efforts from their perspective. This is a very dangerous phenomena, and we need to actually de-escalate, because it is now the time to move around for more diplomatic space. And Anthony Blinken, which is now again in the Middle Eastern trip, let's hope that some positive things come out. However, we have seen a defiant Netanyahu has given a go-ahead for carrying out the operations inside Rafah at all cost. So this is very, very dangerous scenario. If at all that happens, that would actually create a lot of national security issues for the Egypt as well, because the eventual aim of both India and Israel together now, as it appears to be on ground, is to throw all these innocent people, about 1.4 million population in Rafah, deep into the Sinai and clear this entire Gaza Strip from all the Palestinian population and create a new order. And new order would then be...
Yes, definitely. You are absolutely right. This is going to be very frightening, really, particularly for the innocent people who are living right now in Rafah. Akbar, when we are talking about Indian tactics, and it seems that there are lots of fears which the scholars are actually expressing, and that is that India is going to imply some of or all the tactics which are right now going on in Gaza, in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, with the assistance of Israel. They are doing it from the last some years after the 5th of August 2019, and that is going to be intensified. How do you see that aspect?
Indians have been taking note, I believe that they have been taking note of the global response that has been seen on the Gaza-Palestine, the Gaza-Israel conflict. So when we were talking about the tactics, India has already employed similar tactics that Israel has used against the Palestinians. For example, there is an apartheid in Kashmir. There is clamp down on dissent. There is, use of pellet guns, chemical warfare, disappearances. Recently, we saw that there 3 civilians in Kashmir were tortured by the Indian military occupation forces. So they have been taking this inspiration from the Israelis, and I see this intensifying in the future. and I see the Indian state being more emboldened in their actions against the Kashmiris, the Kashmiri resistance in particular. And
so do you not think it's going to be an extremely dangerous phenomena when it comes to the Indo-Israel nexus, what the genocide going on in Gaza, to replicate that into the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
It is very dangerous. It is very dangerous. In fact, it will also enable more cooperation between these two states in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of use of crowd control methods like pellet guns, like spyware like Pegasus. There's a lot of collaboration going on between these two states, and they have a similar stance on their key issues, which is Kashmir and Palestine.
So, do you think that as Israel used the phenomena self-defense into this invasion, because this is not a war, this is a clear invasion and a premeditated genocide which is right now going on, the war crimes in Gaza and West Bank. So, do you think that illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the Kashmiri people, they are at the verge of facing any sort of dangerous situation like that? So, in that sense, what Pakistan has to do?
Basically, in my opinion, both the states are using the narrative of counterterrorism and self-defense to justify attacks on civilian buildings. We saw bombings of a hospital, and what kind of self-defense justifies that you bomb a hospital with infants in that? So using that, we see that that rationale has guided the Indian state in abducting key Kashmiri leaders, in abducting children, and using all sorts of barbarity against civilians. So when it comes to Pakistan, I think that Pakistan may be the only hindrance or obstacle for in the face of Indian aggression, because if it were not for a nuclear armed Pakistan, they would have completely eaten up Kashmir and any small state that could not resist the...
Definitely, you are absolutely very right. Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about Indo-US nexus, Indo-Israel nexus right now, so do you think that this is going to be lethal in a sense that India and Israel has initiated the worst ever form of Islamophobia which is right now going on, and both the countries, both the states, particularly the Modi regime and Nathan regime, are actually towards the ethnic cleansing of Muslims, and wherever it is going to be necessary, they are going to do that. So this is the precedent which is both one of the illegitimate state and an extremist and terrorist state are setting right now.
I have absolutely no doubt that United States has given a tacit approval to Israel for doing whatever it is doing, regardless of what the international community thinks or what the UN Security Council resolution thinks and what the wider international community says about this. And similarly, the United States has also given a tacit approval to India to do whatever they want to do in Kashmir. Unfortunately, we have seen Indo-US strategic partnership and Indo-US nuclear agreement. Since then, the things started to change for the Indo-US relations. And since then, the India's policy has been of almost similar as the Israeli Prime Minister is doing in Gaza. Genocide in Kashmir and genocide in Palestine. Ethnic cleansing of Palestine and ethnic cleansing of Kashmiris. However, there is a difference. While on both occasions they are the occupied forces, and the notion of self-defense and definition of self-defense does not imply in terms of the occupied forces. But in case of Kashmir, because of Pakistan as a nuclear powerful country and the main stakeholder in this Kashmir issue, and also we have a powerful China on the other side, also a stakeholder in the Kashmir issue. So therefore, India's liberty of action has remained curtailed to a large extent. Despite that, India has done a lot of atrocities, killing more than 100,000 innocent Kashmiris. But still, whenever they find the opportunity, they do the same without any bar or without any hindrance from the US policy circles. While in case of Israel, there's absolutely clean chit and go ahead to Prime Minister Netanyahu from the President of the United States to do whatever. And they are actually in a hurry to finish the job. And we have seen the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, whenever he has come, probably he went back, he came without any tangible formula and he went back without any tangible formula. So this is just a PR exercise to go on and linger on the aspects and giving more time to Netanyahu for execution of his war plans. I'm not very optimistic that his visit, the current visit which is going on, would make any difference. But I'm very much optimistic from the diplomatic efforts of Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. Probably they should be able to make some headway on at least ceasefire in short to medium term.
Your point well taken, Dr. Waseem. Dr. Waseem was talking about the diplomatic efforts going on related to the any kind of truce or something like the ceasefire between there in Gaza and West Bank and all that. So, do you think that this nexus between the two, Israel and India, that must have to be exposed at the international level, and in that particular sense, Pakistan has to make extra efforts to highlight this important area, because ultimately Kashmiris are going to be sufferers, Palestinians are suffering right now,
yes,
and this is going to be a troubled region in future if yes, diplomatically these things are not taken very seriously.
That is true. Once we look at the global response and how delayed it was, I agree with Dr. Waseem that we can't be too optimistic or hopeful of how the US has responded to a truce. I think the truce should have come a lot earlier, and this is very late. If some possibility of something of truce,
definitely these delaying tactics are not without any reason.
Yes, exactly. And for Pakistan to diplomatically take this up, it is very important, because in our own neighborhood there is another Palestine-like situation, that is Kashmir, and that is very closely tied to our own stance on human rights.
Tied to our destiny, actually.
Destiny, our stance, our, the concept of our nationhood, it's completely inseparable from it.
Definitely.
So for us to take it up diplomatically, it's very important, and we must highlight the Islamophobic narratives, the rise of a Hindu. It's basically a Hindutva Zionism nexus that is ideologically connected, and it is very much important that we take this up diplomatically at every international forum.
Your point well taken, well taken. Dr. Waseem, how do you respond to this one? Have sheer diplomatic efforts needed at the international level related to the Indo-Israel nexus?
I think it's about time, and we need to reactivate all the diplomatic missions abroad. And since the now new government is fairly in charge, and it has got the mandate of coming 5 years, so this is the right time for the new government and the new foreign minister and our foreign office to activate all resources possible. And we should actually engage all. We have a lot of good relations with all the Middle Eastern countries. We need to get involved with those Middle Eastern countries. We also need to get involved with China and Russia and also the United States, because we have a balanced foreign policy and we are relevant to all such stakeholders. So we may have to take a lead role now in supercharging the stalled efforts which were going on since last some time. And Pakistan is in the right position to actually showcase all its diplomatic efforts and diplomatic skills.
Yeah, definitely. You are absolutely right, Dr. Waseem, that diplomatic efforts are needed at the highest level right now. Thank you very much for being with us online. Thank you very much for your candid views. Thank you very much, Akbar Sheharyar Khan. Thank you very much for your presence here in the studios. Viewers, as you have just listened to our panelists, it is a dire need that we all hopeful that there must have to be a ceasefire in Gaza and West Bank, and Palestinians must have to get their state back from the clutches of the occupation forces and the illegitimate state of Israel. But the thing is that this is very serious juncture at this point in time, when Indo-Israel nexus is working for the genocide, war crimes, atrocities of the Muslims across the world, particularly in Palestine, and also India is doing the same at the footsteps of Israel in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. That must have to be highlighted across the world diplomatically. Pakistan has to gear up its missions. That is important. Along with that, this Hindutva phenomena and also the Islamophobia, which is actually spearheaded by these two states. One is illegitimate and other is actually proactively sponsoring the terrorism across the world. So this is important that Pakistan has to gear up for these efforts. This is today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.